Clubhouse.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Beacon 23 recap. Before we begin, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors over at Boat Rocker. They're the awesome folks behind Beacon 23 as well as the much anticipated new series Orphan Black Echoes.
Oh man, Orphan Black was the bomb. So I really can't wait to watch Orphan Black Echoes actually.
And in case you're totally interested in tuning into Orphan Black Echoes, I'm going to give you a quick premise of what to expect. First of all, set in the year 2052, a whole 37 years after the original series wrapped up, Echoes takes us into the lives of the now adult Kira and her wife. The two leading ladies include Kristen Ritter, who is Marvel's Jessica Jones, and Keely Hawes from Bodyguard. Together, they set off on a mission to help a girl with amnesia piece her life back together. And I hear it's a wild ride, team.
Cool. When and where can we watch it?
I'm glad you asked. Orphan Black Echoes premieres Sunday, June 23rd on AMC, AMC Plus, and BBC America.
I can't wait to see the next chapter of the Orphan Black universe.
Today's Beacon 23 interview is brought to you by Boat Rocker, producers of Beacon 23 and the upcoming series Orphan Black Echoes. This is Paul with Pod Clubhouse, and Gabby and I get another golden opportunity to chat with Beacon 23 showrunner Glen Mazzara. We're recording this before the finale, but we've all seen everything, so this is your official spoiler alert. We are going to try and get Glen to spill every last bean in his Beacon 23 urn of knowledge. How are you doing today, Glen?
Really great. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you.
Yeah. So this one takes us back to season 1. So question, Hope is Milan's original AI, and she helped him transcend. So my question is Harmony Hope 2.0 from season 1? Was that Natasha's voice for Hope?
No, it wasn't. I think it was just an actor we brought in for that episode. But good guess, though. That's a good try. I don't think we thought of that.
Okay, that's funny. So I wanted to ask then, what happened to Hope?
As soon as he transcended and became Aleph, I think he probably just moved past Hope. So I guess she's probably still somewhere, but I think he moved past her.
Okay.
Like an old Nintendo, when you get Super Nintendo, you just quit using the old Nintendo.
Yeah, she's
somewhere.
She's fallen by the wayside. Yeah, she's somewhere.
So while we're on the topic of AI and Harmony, was Harmony always, as far as like breaking the story, the key to the transcendence required to communicate with the artifact? Or was that part of the show and how you adapted it when you took over?
To be honest, I think that was something that the writers, and particularly Joy Blake, my co-showrunner in season 2, she pushed for that. So that sort of came out, early on we had the episode in which Harmony goes into the purgatory and Natasha just did a great job, and we were excited about writing for her. And after Lena wasn't in those episodes, and we needed someone to go to, and Natasha's such a terrific actor that we just started sort of thinking more about her character. And so I think as we started getting into season 2, we were developing that, and then Joy really took that and ran with it and kind of made that sing, I think, in the finale.
Oh my God, thank you, Joy, because what an ending.
Yeah, when you said that you couldn't guess what was coming, I didn't guess what was coming.
What did you think about it? How did it play for you?
Oh, I was very satisfied.
Oh, good.
It was something that, as it played out, made sense with what I was being given. And that's always a very satisfying way to watch a TV show. And to fully understand what you were trying to do with it as you were going. So I enjoyed it, and I thought you achieved what you wanted to achieve with that ending.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah, I agree. The way you set it up during the last conversation where you said you think we're going to be satisfied and all of our questions will be answered, and it really sets you up for a new season. You're right. I really want there to be a new season. It was perfect. I appreciated it so much, and I plan on hopefully diving into some of that later.
Hopefully, yeah.
I'm afraid my questions might feel like they're jumping around a little bit, but I just love getting a chance to find out stuff that wasn't explained, that was left up to the viewer to find out or to puzzle out. So In the young Aster episode,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that young Aster killed the soldier in the airlock? Because as a threesome, we do.
Why do you think that?
I think that because that was, in that scenario, the only way that I think she gets out of that situation. The soldier was bent on killing Jocko. Jocko had saved Aster's life, whether sort of indirectly or directly, but in their they had a shared history. And regardless of what had been happening in the airlock with the soldier, I think he was sort of a lost cause for right then. And if it was like a mortal type situation for someone that had saved her life, then she'd pick Jocko.
And I think that if she had killed him, then it sets Aster up for the future for making those tough calls. It would explain some of her character later on.
Okay, that's interesting. I'll be honest, it works both ways. In my mind, and we wanted to leave it up to the audience. In my mind, she does enter QTA at some point and meets Harmony. So there's a version in which QTA arrives, arrests everyone, maybe unleashes this guy somewhere else that would fit with Olive's plan. And she, meets Harmony when she's at QTA and then goes on that path and sort of becomes the wild child that she talked about when she was with Coley. So she needs to get onto that path. That's one version. The other version is that, okay, she does kill that person. Even if she kills that person or she doesn't kill that person, what's important is that she understands what these soldiers go through, that these soldiers are turned into killing machines, that these soldiers are fed false memories. And in a way, it's easy to just say they're evil, but in another way, they're victims as well.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the function of the young Aster story is to give context to Halen's story through Aster's POV. Remember in the second episode where the wreckers arrive?
Yeah.
And Halen does the gag where he jumps over the table and is pretending to beat her. So the guys watching through the camera are saying, oh, wow, I can't believe he's doing it.
Yeah.
And she pushes him off. What was interesting was Lena really played it like, get off of me, get off of me. But it was a gag. He wasn't really hitting her. So she must have been triggered in some way. So I was editing that and I was like, well, why is she playing it that way? It had been filmed before I joined the show. So I thought, well, that's really interesting. What is she triggering about? There's something in that character that is triggered. So then I was thinking about it, and that's when we wrote the speech about what happened to her mom. I think it's interesting that she does have compassion for Halen, even though Halen is threatening to her at first. Why is she compassionate? So I think to show that because she's a complex character, and also I think the writers were kind of catching up to Lena's performance, the young Aster story fills in a lot of those gaps for us of who is that character and what has Halen gone through and how does Aster see it. I'll leave it to the audience to decide whether or not she pulls the trigger. But what I do think is important is if she pulls the trigger, who does she become? If she didn't pull the trigger, who did she become? It's an interesting question. So I'm not going to say, again, I do think it can work both ways.
Oh, you've given a lot to chew on, that's for sure. The path to QTA where she inherits Harmony, that connects pretty nicely, but that doesn't necessarily mean she doesn't put the soldier down.
It doesn't. And that's kind of what I wanted in that episode. Here's a story in which we're not quite giving you the ending. Okay, we're giving you the setup, but not the ending. And you know what comes afterwards, but there's a little mystery there. I thought that was an interesting way to tell a story because the show, to me, is about puzzle solving. It is about the audience has to work to watch this. Now, the audience can get frustrated at sometimes, but I think, like you said, you're satisfied at the end. And I want to talk about the very ending, if we can, about the very ending of the finale. But you'll see that the pieces do come together. It's a labyrinth, but I do think they come together. So with that, the other thing to notice to me as a filmmaker is that the young Astor episode is the only episode that does, and I think we mentioned last time how we really worked hard to look at the ends of each episode. It's like the last scene, the last shot, you know what I mean? Like those are really important. This is the only one that doesn't play, that has no music in it.
Right.
It's literally
Oh,
just the
yeah.
5 characters, the 5th character being an AI. It's sort of like there's a famous Twilight episode, 5 characters in search of an exit. And that was an inspiration for us on this one.
We called it the Tony Soprano ending. So
maybe. I was thinking Rod Serling, but okay, I'll give you Tony Soprano. Sure, I'll take it. That's great. That's a great comparison. Thank you.
Speaking about all the pieces that come together and looking at Beacon as an exercise in TV show world building, how deeply does the writer's room go to define things like QTA, ISA, the military, how the soldier augmentation program worked, just sort of the nuts and bolts you need to make consistent from episode to episode?
We had a lot of that. You know, Zach Penn did a lot of the heavy lifting with QTA and Milan and Olive. That all came from Zach. Halen's story, the augmentations, that was originally established in season 1. We kind of moved away from it. And then Joy really pushed deeper into that in these last 2 episodes 7 and 8 of season 2. You know, the return of Halen's father, you know, that was Joy's conceit and everything. Flashing back to the prisoner soldier in the young Astor episode, that was something that our 2 writers, Nate O'Mahony and Michaela Gingray, who were assistants on the show, and they you know, we gave them an opportunity. I thought they did a great job with the script, and so they kind of came up with this. You know, the idea of there's this horror movie was the concept. You know, there's a horror movie, and you know, there's something in the house. There's a secret in the house. You know, and we started thinking about that, and then we were able to connect the dots to Halen and Astor and the larger story through the idea that it's this augmented soldier. So we spent a lot of time talking about these things.
Similarly, how thoroughly do you need things defined when working in spaces like the finale's kind of alternate plane of existence?
What do you mean?
Well, I can imagine that you may not need to know exactly how that space works in order to write it, but it would sure feel better if you did, because the fact that a human energy can commingle with an AI consciousness, and they can push each other around and kind of conjure up things like world's greatest boss mugs and father's desks and things. It seems like for me, if I was writing it, I would definitely want to know all the rules, what you can do, what you can't do. But I could imagine there are probably some writers that are just like, well, you know, it works. It looks good on screen. So this is it.
You know, you raise a good question. I think one of the things that we embraced was to make this show different from other space set shows. Let's say you have a show like The Expanse, and a lot of our crew actually worked on The Expanse. That's a show that is, you know, hard science and takes a lot of that stuff very seriously. And I think I said this last time, that show has done that. So to me, the idea of, you know, let's go back to one person and then 2 people trapped in a lighthouse. And if the lighthouse, it's a house, becomes a Gothic castle and becomes you know, and we hear creaks and we hear groans and it becomes a manifestation of their subconscious in some level. Okay. We're starting to push into subconscious imagery. We're starting to push into a different type of storytelling. So I think there's a dream logic, which might sound like a cop-out, but I think there's a dream logic to the show that plays into a trippiness, more like the ending of 2001. Now, that's not a trippiness of consciousness. That is actually, you know, a figure seeing, you know, light traveling, you know, the speed of light and turning around and seeing yourself coming and all of that stuff. So you start having that type of stuff playing, but it does feel like a dream sequence at the end of that. So that was part of the inspiration, and we kind of embraced the subconscious dream logic. So, you know, Joy wrote that last episode, and when she got into that space, you look at, say, Aster attacking and
Hmm.
killing Aleph, and then he's poof, sort of Beetlejuice. He's on the other side of the room, putting his head back on, that kind of stuff.
Oh my
There's a
God, yeah.
dream logic to it. You want it to be fun, you want it to be entertaining, and I think at this point we knew where we were going with the last few scenes, and that I felt did feel like hard science. Like the appearance at the end, that did make sense to me. So I felt like we had kind of earned our way to sort of have some fun in it. So whether or not all the rules add up in the end, I think they do, but again, you're applying sort of a dream logic.
Well, I can't think of another time that I've seen that kind of thing that didn't take place inside a machine or cyberspace. Like the human
Correct.
consciousness.
You're not sure where it is. You're not
Right.
sure where
Yeah.
it is. Yes, yes, yes.
Usually we have to go to them being the AI
Yes.
or whatever. They don't usually come to us. So,
Yes.
yeah, okay. So that was new.
So we learned in the season finale that harmony was the key due to her human and AI interactions. And for my interpretation, for instance, Olive couldn't be the one because he fails to connect with anyone or anything. And Bart struggled with integration with humanity and was too emotionally attached sometimes. Bart, Olive, Aster, and Halen all seemed to be emotionally driven. And something to point out was that Harmony always acted with logic. Even though she did have emotions and experienced them, it seems that down to her decision to terminate Dev, it was always a logical reasoning. So to me, it seemed like she became the best of both human and AI. And of course, that led to the artifact unveiling itself. So that said, was it possible that becoming the chosen one was a free for all and she just happened to reach it first? Like, were all of them, each of these characters, potentially able to get there?
I think they were all on a path, but they all fell short in some way. And I think they fell short because they leaned on sort of the negatives of humanity, whereas Harmony took the best from humanity.
Okay.
So I would say, for example, I think Olaf has a lot of anger, he has a lot of rage, and he has a lot of ego. I think Bart, Halen, and Asta have a lot of trauma that they project onto other people. I would say not only is she logical, but I don't think it's pure logic in like a Spock type of logic. I would say she's rational. She's able to take her emotions out of the thing. She's not given to fits of rage. She's not given to fits of anger. She's not really given to fits of violence. When she is violent back in the netherworld, the purgatory or whatever, she's trying to defend herself. When she eliminates Dev, she's doing this because Dev is a threat. Dev has just killed Dosto. So she is kind of clinical about her violence, but she also is able to feel. You see her, she's sitting there. I thought Natasha did a beautiful performance. I thought it's a great performance where she's sitting on the steps talking to Aster, and she's crying. And she says, "Oh, this is exhausting," or whatever the line is. So she has these emotions that she's able to internalize, and she's going through a growth process. And it's through that growth process that, because she's an integrated being, she is not necessarily a threat that will eliminate the Rifts, okay, who appears to her. So can we talk about the appearance, right?
Sure.
So the alien appears, but in a way, the alien has done a type of eugenics and created the perfect fusion of AI and human. What Aleph tried to do and failed and couldn't, because he couldn't take his ego out. The Riff aliens who have been hiding in this pocket universe were able to say, okay, we want to come out of this pocket universe. It's boring in here. So we're going to come out. But if we come out, these crazy people are going to kill us. So we have to kind of create a being that is not going to threaten us, that's going to be on our side. So they've sort of orchestrated a type of being and have evolved Harmony into that being so that they can now enter into a new relation. So you could say that the Rifts are motivated by fear or whatever. You could also say that they're the big bad. That'll remain to be seen where we go. But that is the thinking behind this, the machinations.
I have more questions on that, but you did bring up that beautiful scene with Aster and Harmony, and I wanted to ask you, how was it writing that? Because it was so powerful and emotional for me. I actually cried. The last episode that made me cry that way was the one with Milan and Sophie. So I wanted to know, I guess, what it was like writing that, reuniting them, what the intention was, and also, is there a scene in general in the final episode that you're most proud of?
That was Joy Blake wrote that, and she did a great job. And she just knew, I just want to have these two women sitting there in an intimate, we haven't seen people sit on those stairs. The stair is such an iconic part of the set. We haven't used it that way. So she was able to find something new, and they're just having this conversation. It was just really kind of surprising. Both actors just loved playing it. Joy's a terrific writer, and you just kind of turn her loose, and that's what she comes up with. So I think it was just about, she just wanted to show that this is what she felt was one of the hearts, or if not the heart of the show, that relationship. And it's probably a relationship we've taken for granted as viewers. We just sort of assume this is it, but it was interesting. And of course, the director and the actor nailed it. The actors nailed it. And then I would say the scenes that I'm proud of, I did a lot of editing for this episode, but I would say that the thing that I'm personally proud of is, I love that, we created that scene where Harmony's speaking to the alien, and the alien's saying, okay, you were ready to receive us. And then you have that hard cut. And then, she walks around and she looks up, and, I designed that creature. I had some ideas on what I wanted that creature, how I wanted it to appear. And we were speaking around the world to creature designers at Weta.
New Zealand, right?
Yeah, in New Zealand. And I'm like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And then they're sending you sketches and all of this stuff. How much fun is that? I mean, where you get, that's just that's just a great thing about being in this business, where you get to have these awesome conversations. You get to see sketches, and, and then they're developing it. But then I talked a little bit about this last time. Then I had to go on strike. The Writers Guild went on strike.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh my God.
Oh, so you didn't see the end?
I did, but they had to develop it without me, so usually
oh my gosh,
you would get different stages. And I was just like, I hope nobody cuts it. I'm sure it's going to be expensive. I think it's a great way to end the season.
Wow.
I hope it doesn't get cut while I'm walking around with a picket sign or something. And then I came back, and it had been cut in, and I was just like, that is just beautiful. I loved it. So I was really proud and happy that the vision came together. I was very happy to see that. Maybe it's just because it's a great science fiction toy, and everybody wants to build a monster or an alien or a creature or something. So that was just a lot of fun to do as a filmmaker. I had not been able to do something to that level.
Up until then?
Yeah, I hadn't been able to do that before, really. I'd done some creature design for a pilot based on Stephen King's Dark Tower, but that never made it to air. So this was the biggest thing I had gotten to do like that.
Wow. So this was your first baby, and it was a really good one. Congratulations. That was an overwhelming scene. And actually, I did have a question about that jellyfish species. Was part of the inspiration for that look because there is a jellyfish species that's immortal?
I wanted something that was kind of Spielbergian and awe-inspiring. I did not. There's a version in which it opens its mouth and you see 1,000 teeth and it kind of roars like a dinosaur and you feel it's threatening, right? That's something we had discussed. I didn't want that. I wanted a sense of wonder. I wanted something mysterious. I didn't want to know that, it was a monster necessarily. I wanted it to be, what is that? And a jellyfish is sort of delicate. Of course, we had to stick with the nautical motif because it's a lighthouse, but I thought that the scale of this thing descending through the central stairwell that we're discussing, that had several levels, that I just really wanted it to be like, wow, what is that? And so for Harmony to be in her new consciousness, for her to look up and be like, wow, what is that? I just wanted that. We talked to Ramin and Will, the composers. We wanted certain music to kind of give that. I'm sure there have been versions where, with this kind of a scene, particularly in a finale where you thing roars or you see all the teeth behind, and you could have embraced a more rage-filled Cthulhu type creature. I wanted something more, again, you see it, you appreciate it about the show, hopefully appreciate it, but you're not sure what it means or what's coming next. I think that fit with the tone of the show. It gives you an answer, but also raises a question. And I felt if it was threatening, then you just know it's threatening, and that's clear. You know what I mean? Like, then you kind of know what happens. When you watch this, you're not exactly sure what's going to happen next. A lot of different things could happen next. And so I felt like that was worth pursuing.
The last time we spoke, you had maybe tipped your hand a little bit with you didn't want necessarily the Kubrick of it in terms of like space weirdness, but you were okay with Lynchian weirdness.
Yes.
And so that ending does evoke some of that end of 2001 in the Monolith transference that Dave makes. However, the appearance of the alien is not quite as obtuse, I guess, as the weird room that he's in at the end and all that. It just reminds you of it without being it.
Right.
When you mentioned that, it was an interesting comment, but now I think I understand it more.
So we know Milan had hopes for a greater good, and then that changed with Aleph after the transcendence. So that said, now that Harmony has her clan that she's imprinted on and is somewhat carrying them on to some other place with another journey with the artifact, is Milan happy somewhere in the universe on how things worked out?
Probably not, just because I would say, Milan is a narcissist. Milan is about himself, and I think Asta has a line in this episode in which she says, don't trust men with, great plans or something like that. I forget exactly what the line is, but she says that. So I think, if it was on his terms, he was seeking the Godhead. His transcendence was about his transcendence. He can dress it up and say, "Oh, this is for the good of everybody else," but it's only for the good of himself. So I would say he's probably not happy, not satisfied, which is good because he's an interesting character. So you want him unsatisfied.
I saw that Milan in season 1, Milan seemed disgusted by Sophie's beacon decor. And after they spent some time together in that amazing episode, she had seemed to soften him up to the point where he said he wanted her partnership. And he stated himself that she had what he lacked and that he would, take with him what the experience that they had. And at least for me, it seems like he had maybe had some sort of epiphany and glimpse of potential growth in the future. However, Bart killed him. So once after that, he transcended into Olive, things did change and he was like full narcissist. That said, my question, I guess, was had Milan lived longer after knowing Sophie and having that impression, like would he have potentially become sort of a Harmony type figure? Would he have learned or gained empathy? Milan's problem was that he couldn't connect and then with anyone, but that changed with Sophie. She was the one person he connected with. I guess my question was, is it a stretch to say that if he hadn't died immediately, would he had a chance to potentially transcend later to, I don't know, get to meet the artifact? But I guess the answer is no, since he's a narcissist through and through.
Yes, that would be my answer. But let's just open it up a little bit, though. I do think he was affected. He was changed by her. He returns to her. There could have been a version in which it's sort of like is it the Winter Warlock who kind of melts. And the old Santa Claus is coming to town, I believe. The
animated,
the old time, the old animated thing, where he sort of melts. So it's possible that he could have softened. He could have gone back to his daughter. He could have. There is a road not taken, telling the story and what we needed for our story. And again, that was the thing with Sophie was a backstory. It was kind of a prequel. If we were telling a different story or pursuing it, yeah, it's conceivable. It's conceivable there could have been something different. But I still think part of what Zach's original vision for the show was, Aleph was going to push QTA and the military and everything to kind of drive forward along, these authoritarian lines. I think we stuck with the story that we were given and we told the right story. But yeah, there's probably a way. I mean, Eric Lang is such a terrific actor. I think you give him anything to do, he can figure it out. So we didn't explore it. It's kind of a fun exercise to think about, what if we did this? What if we did that?
Well, that's an interesting point. At that, like Gabby's describing, at the very last moment, he kind of foreshadowed what actually needed to take place.
Yeah.
Build this super being that was worthy of the artifact's attention, but he just didn't get there.
Correct. Yes, he wasn't the one to kind of cross over to the promised land. He could see it, but he couldn't cross over in the way that he was the leader that he wanted to be. He couldn't go that far because that wouldn't have worked out. Ultimately, the puppet masters here are the Riffs, the Riff aliens, and I think they clearly saw him as a threat.
Oh, yeah, that's true. They're way beyond. Yeah. Alrighty, so Aleph had realized that he was fighting for nothing, and he had that existential moment in the final episode. Were there to be a season 3, is that something that we would dive into where Aleph's journey would be followed, or would we make it into the Pocket universe? Would we stay on Beacon 23?
Well, I don't want to give anything away, but I would want to stay on the Beacon and kind of find out who's there and what does this connection mean. If you think about that, connection is really a huge event now. It's kind of a ground zero for a reshaping of the universe. I would want to it makes the Beacon not just important because it's close to this Pocket universe, but now it's ground zero for this contact. I think that's very important. So listen, it's hard to tell a story that takes place on this one location and you're not cutting to other parts of the universe, that kind of stuff. So I like that challenge. I like that. I would want to see, okay, given all we have going on, how do we push that story forward? I think we have something.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely admire that about your writing, but it does make everything such a tease because you do keep me wondering and wanting more from everywhere else. So well done there.
Thank you.
So this is kind of a fun one. The goo reminded me, the goo that was found in the pilot seat of the ship that docked with no human, and Halen and Iris walked in. Iris touched the goo. It released a gas. I'm curious as to what would have happened if that gas had reached them, if they hadn't jumped out and sealed it.
Yeah, I think we were playing it that it would have been threatening and probably would have liquefied them or something. I'm going to say nothing good would have happened.
Love that. Yeah. Was that part of the artifact or just kind of a
more related to the Pocket universe portal?
Right.
Yeah.
We think it's more of the membrane between if there's some type of membrane, there's some type of barrier, there's something that's kind of, whether that's something that the aliens have constructed there or there's something there that we do feel that to pass through that it's we had talked about that there was some type of membrane or there was some type of anomaly or something like that. In our mind, in our descriptions, I do remember people discussing a membrane.
So we were talking about AI before in the previous episode, and you had mentioned that's something that Zach had sort of developed and gone down a certain amount of detail with, and then needed to be pulled back and needed to be redeveloped a little bit to tell your story. But when we're looking at AI and just Glen Mazzara's own attitude toward it, what do you think of where we are with AI right now in the workplace?
It probably has more merit in certain parts of the workplace than others. Okay, because my understanding is that AI is going to take what's already there and sort of reassemble it, right?
Yeah.
So, maybe you can create a document that, it's probably good for writing manuals. It's probably good for putting certain things together. It's probably good for putting contracts together, stuff that's very dry, but stuff that, when you hear somebody and they go, oh, it's a boilerplate document, or it's a boilerplate contract, or it's that.
Yeah.
That's where I would expect you would use AI. I don't think it allows for creativity. I'm not particularly worried about it taking my job or something like that. I'm just not, because, this stuff is hard to do. It's hard for people to do. I think that anything I've seen from AI is a curiosity and is interesting, but I don't think it's particularly inspiring. I'd be very surprised if I ever read a novel or watch a movie that's completely created by an AI and it moves me to tears. I just don't think. I think it would feel manipulative. It is amazing what it can do, but I think a lot of people are kind of saying game over. AI's here and it's going to do this, it's going to do that. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. When computers came in, everyone's computers are going to change everything. Yeah, and of course they did. But we're still working hard. We're still doing our work. We still have our problems. It wasn't the panacea that everybody said it was going to be. I mean, there's still people having to try to figure out how to live their lives, how to do things. So I take all the AI stuff with a grain of salt. And to be honest, I think you have to go a long way before people trust AI. I mean, my wife and I were walking down the street yesterday, and we saw a driverless car, got the spinning cameras, and it's just taking pictures of the street as it drives around. Who wants that? Who thinks that's a good idea? That's a terrible idea. I don't need that, and I don't trust this thing. I'm like, get the hell away from it. Like, I'm not going to cross in front of it. I don't trust it. I don't want it near me. I need to be really convinced that AI is as big a problem as everybody says it is, and that it's as helpful as it is. I think it'll settle into it does certain things, and it can't do other things, and it'll settle down, and then some other technology will come out and it'll be all about that. But I'm not worried about being in any Terminator encampments or anything. I'm just not worried about that. Listen, I understand that planes have a lot of computers on planes, but I'm not getting on a pilotless plane. I'm not going to put my family. I'm not going to put my family. I'm just not. Everybody can tell me it's safer. I'm not going to do that. That's not going to change my behavior. I'm not going to fly across the ocean if there's no pilot there. I'm just not. I'm not going to go to an AI physician and have surgery from that and accept medication from that. I'm just not. People might say that's foolish, but I just don't have a level of trust in it.
You answered my next question. I think I'll ask it so maybe you can elaborate a little bit more if you want. So the man who trained Aster when she was younger, he was very anti-AI reliant. He supported human self-sufficiency. And so my question was, if there are themes from today's world that inspired this in the storyline, and why is it so important that he was so resistant to AI dependency in the show?
You mean Jocko?
Yeah.
I think he was just old school. And, a lot of it had to do with that there was this war situation. He tells a story about, there was a war situation, and he had a creative solution that led to the evacuation of the planet, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
Okay, so I think that type of creativity to solve problems is something that he also, like me, wouldn't trust AI to do. They would just kind of do a calculation and say, well, this is worth the resources or whatever. But there's no ethics in AI. It's just rationality. It's just decisions. It's just what's been done before. One of the things we don't really talk about AI is, and I'm kind of getting off your topic a little bit, but think about this.
Oh, that's fine.
We've just had, many, many years where we've talked about DEI initiatives, okay? And we can realize that a lot of the history that we're carrying has an institutional racism and sexism and gender bias and classism in it. That's what AI is pulling from. So how do you change for the better? I mean, how does AI address civil rights? How does AI address LGBTQ rights? It doesn't. It wouldn't, because historically that has not been the case. So it would just go by the cumulative history of what's been. You have to prove to me that AI is not racist or sexist. You see my point?
Mm-hmm.
So the creativity that is needed to solve problems and as a human race to kind of stumble forward is something that can only come from humanity. I don't believe it can come from a program. I just don't believe that. I worked on the Jocko material, and probably a lot of this type of thinking kind of worked its way onto the page, because that is how I think.
Yeah. So say our current AI evolved to the level that Harmony did. Would you trust it then? Or do you even think that's even possible in the real world?
No, that's terrible. I mean, that's being manipulated by an alien influence. That's not what you want. That's a problem. Just because we like Harmony, well, why is that good?
I see. You just, you're traditionalist. You think humans, we are how we're supposed to be, the good and the bad. It's natural, organic.
Yeah, I mean, I could see how there are enhancements or whatever, certainly I could see that, but especially in a futuristic, scientific space or whatever. But I think there has to be some type of union with humans leading the charge. I don't think you could subordinate humanity to the technology. I think that would be a mistake. As screwed up as humans are, I just don't think a being that is more technology than human is going to be going to have any compassion, going to have any self-reflection, is going to have the capacity for growth. It might have the capacity for improvement, but it wouldn't have the capacity for growth as we define it when we say someone's growing as a person.
Seems like Joy maybe was more on board with the AI evolution, since she's the one who wrote those, I guess, Harmony evolved scenes.
Yeah. I think, probably. And that's probably a difference. What was important in our conversations was she really liked the idea of union, of synthesis, of everyone coming together. And so, yes, Harmony is part of it. And she's the lead, let's say, but that union, that synthesis was a driving force. I remember in the, when the script was being written, everyone is looking for meaning, and they can only find meaning in their collective experience.
You're telling me that it was a happy coincidence then that Harmony was named Harmony right from the get-go?
That is a happy coincidence, yes.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Watching that scene where they're all touching each other to make the transcendence happen, it made me just think of like a chord on a piano.
Yeah. I was like, genius, beautiful, brilliant from the beginning. But no, you're telling me that it just happened. It was meant to be. It was destiny. I love that.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. But whenever I've worked on shows like this, I haven't worked on a show like this, but whenever you have a show that has a lot of characters and a lot of complicated plot or whatever, you'd be surprised how the pieces there's an energy within itself. The story sort of starts taking over, and it becomes intuitive. So there's something magical about it. So you get to the end and you're like, oh yeah, it is all about Harmony, and oh yeah, it is about this alien. It's about their union and their possible synthesis and or their encounter, their first contact. And you go, oh, well, that's really interesting. And her name is Harmony, and I guess that's where we were going the whole time. Like, how did that happen? How did that come together? There is something magical about the creative process that you always get to the end and you go, yeah, I just feel like I was a passenger on a train. I don't even know. I wasn't exactly sure we were going here, where we were going, but we got here, and this feels right. It's not all accident. I would just say it's a mysterious process.
Well, I would like you to work on another show like this, because you and sci-fi make me happy. So,
well, thank you. That's very kind. Thank you. I would love to.
But I do wonder what Beacon 23 would be like if Joy wasn't on board, right? Because you two created some sort of balance.
Yeah, I think so. I think, we worked well together, and that was important. I mean, Joy and I had worked together, several times before that. This was her first time running a show, but we had developed stuff together where we were going to be co-showrunners. So, I believe in her as a writer, and she did a great job.
Okay, so considering how AI is punished constantly for their bad behavior, I think I might know the answer now, but my original question was, is there some story behind that or childhood experience that inspired the consequences and timeouts that this AI experiences in the show?
Like the soldiers, how they put them in the sandbox, is that what they call them?
If they say something, it's just, Bart was muted and the AI.
Well, that's interesting. I guess there is a version to a perspective of the show where it's a lot of the push and pull of AI taking a step forward, humanity pushing it back, coming forward. I would say the story there is that it can't be stopped, that no matter how much you may try to stop it, it's still going to move ahead. People probably have different tolerances for what can be allowed. So that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. But I do think it was all of the steps forward were feel to me like individual character steps. In a way, the technology here, Milan, Bart, the soldiers, QTA as manifested through individuals, those are character beats. There's no monolithic like supercomputer or something like that, but ultimately it's most of the technology is impersonal. We made it a collection of individuals. If you think about it, every time we had something like that, we dramatized it in an individual way. I think that's unique to the show. When you have a monolithic technology like Skynet or the Matrix, those things are impersonal and have no personality. They have no individuality, and they're just these big monolithic threatening forces. You do have individual technological beings like Data in Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
But the Cylons in Battlestar Galactica, impersonal. So one of the ways that we looked at our technology is that Bart, Olive, Dev, the soldiers, all of these things were sort of personal, in a way that they were all players in a play, that they were all individuals, individual characters. So that was something that we tried to do a little differently to differentiate the show from other shows, but also that was just the type of storytelling that, because it's about again, the core seed is two people trapped on a lighthouse. It's a very small individual story. So we did that when we dramatized different types of technology or different discussions about technology. We kind of brought it down to the individual level.
All right, Glenn, I know you need to get running, but before we let you go, we have to know, when will you find out about season 3?
I'm not really sure. I would love to do a season 3. That's all I can say.
It's out there in the universe. Glenn's on board. Yeah. He just needs the green light.
Yeah.
Please.
We got the set. We're good to go.
Okay, I do have one last question too. In tribute of the theme of the show, we previously spoke of the ocean and the vastness, and you did say that it does scare you. But, the ocean and that vastness calms me. That being said, is there somewhere that you go personally to experience peace? Is there a happy place of Glenn's we can know about?
Yeah, you mean a physical place? Or, I mean, I meditate every
Sure.
day. I do transcendental meditation, so that's always very calming. But you know what I love to do that is a very simple, happy place is I love to walk my dog in Santa Monica, down to the water every evening. I take a picture of the sunset, or I'm there right around that time. I appreciate the ocean there, I appreciate sunset. I appreciate California. It's just, I appreciate my dog. It's just, that is my happy place right there. I'll give you that.
That's beautiful.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us again, Glenn.
My pleasure. It's very flattering that you watch the show so closely and enjoy it. And it's just always a pleasure to discuss all this stuff with fans. So I just really do thank you for putting all the effort in. And it's a lot of fun for me. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here, Glenn.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.
Pod Clubhouse.